Hey everyone, welcome to another special live edition of the Bolt Crew podcast. Dave Pele, Josh Pele, and Mario Heron. Again, a special show for you just to preview what's going to happen with the Chargers Steelers game. Again, this is a big time game. Two teams, 2-0, facing each other. Could be a possible playoff matchup, but we have a guest, and that's why we're doing the show. And it's going to be a shorter show than normal. It's not going to be one of these hour-long shows, but it's a preview to the big game on Sunday. Again, if you're tuning in, make sure you know this is going to be a live show for us on Sunday with you, the audience. So we're going to watch the game together. So you can comment during the game. We're going to sit there and go through all the emotions together. And then, believe it or not, the hard part's going to be trying to do a post-game show after, which will be live as well with your participation, because I think everything we have to say for 3 hours is then going to be a post-game show. Now, Josh is looking at me right now like, what do you mean? We're still doing a post-game show?
No, I'm saying the interview right now is not live. This is
No, this
recorded.
isn't live. But when we want to remind the audience, we're going live on Sunday.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Doing it live.
There we go. We're doing it live. It's the way we go all the time. All right. So I won't waste any more time because the guest is standing by. But again, joining us from the BetQL Network, it's Chris Mack, who's nice enough to join us, talk a little Steelers Chargers football. And Chris, I'm going to go first. I'm going to take the question that every one of these guys would ask anyway first.
Okay.
Quarterback situation. Justin Fields, you have Russell Wilson. We know it's going to be Fields to start the game. Is Wilson healthy enough if Fields, messes up and to say, hey, we're going to change things up and we're going to go to Russell Wilson? And who is the best overall quarterback for the Steelers for the remainder of the season?
Before I dive into that big question that you sort of tagged it with there, I'm gonna start with the very simple answer of Sunday. I imagine Russell Wilson will once again be the emergency quarterback. I was just talking to Mark Cabali, my good friend, who covers the Steelers for the Pat McAfee show. And he told me, there's no way Russ is going on Sunday. Still very limited at practice. Russ spoke yesterday and said his calf is feeling better, but I don't think there's any way at all. There's a break glass in case of emergency kind of deal. It'll be Justin Fields' game on Sunday unless something, really out of the ordinary were to happen, in which case they would have to go to Kyle Allen, who is right now the backup, with Russ being dressed as the third quarterback and the emergency quarterback. You would obviously have to have two injuries before you could go to Russ. That's what I suspect will be the deal on Sunday. As for the greater overarching question of who's the better quarterback for this team, I mean, how far do we want to dive into that? For now, for the next month, for the next 3 months, for the next 2 years? There are different answers, I think. And it all comes down to whoever is going to turn the ball over the least. Justin Fields has at the very least done that the first 2 weeks. And that's what an Arthur Smith offense demands. It wants its quarterback to play it safe. They want to be able to, much like the Chargers have done to this point, although they've got a better quarterback, lean on the run game. Ask your defense to make some big splash plays, as Mike Tomlin would call them, and set your offense up in an advantageous position. And hopefully average more than half a touchdown a game, which is what the Steelers offense is averaging right now. I think they would take the safety of Fields not turning the ball over at all over the idea of taking any more risky shots downfield and perhaps those turning into turnovers. They did have a couple of big plays called back last week because of offensive line injuries. So they are still occasionally trying to lift the lid off the defense, as it were. Right now, Fields is handling things pretty well. And if he continues to handle things well, he'll be the guy going forward, I think, until, Russell Wilson, until he does something to prove that he's not as protective of the offense with the football as Russell Wilson may be. Deep into the future, it all depends on how I think the next 6 to 8 weeks shake out. If Justin Fields can continue to protect the football, but maybe inject a little bit more life into the offense. We know he can do it when he breaks the pocket and uses his legs. There is a very real possibility that Mike Tomlin, who loved Fields coming out of Ohio State for the draft, had him top on their board that draft year, that Mike Tomlin sees him as the guy for the future, or at least for another year, right? But right now, it's Fields, unless something should go catastrophically wrong in the next week or two.
Do you think Fields will be the difference in this game? Leading up to this show, we were talking about how the defense for the Chargers is finally sound. We brought in Jesse Minter from Michigan. The defense looks fantastic. The Steelers, as everyone knows, has Minka and TJ Watt and Highsmith and Patrick Queen. They have players all over their defense. Do you think this will be a defensive battle? Right now, the over-under is 35.5.
Yeah, and I'd still smash the under, guys. I think this is classic. I hate to, use this analogy because I'm sure you guys have already been beaten over the head with it, but this is a Harbaugh and a Tomlin coaching. Like, this is going to be, this is Greg Roman against the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is classic Steelers Ravens. And so just change the logo on the side of the helmet and change the uniforms. And I think you're going to get something pretty similar to what we've seen over the last half decade or so between the Steelers and the Ravens, which is a Greg Roman offense that wants its quarterback to be mobile, to maybe make some things happen with his legs, which we've seen Herbert do against the Steelers in the not so distant past, and force turnovers, right? Both of these defenses are going to try to get to the quarterback and force mistakes. I think it's going to look very, very similar, like I said, to what you've seen from Steelers-Ravens meetings over the last 4 to 5 years.
Give me what you think is going to be like the Steelers' game plan going into this game, right? Because the Chargers have really changed their identity this year. They've gone from let's air this sucker out until our quarterback's arm falls off to we're running the hell out of the football. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, you're going to get tons of touches. So kind of give me the game plan versus the Steelers, because obviously you want to take away the run against a hardball team, but you'd never know how good that arm's going to be for Herbert.
Right. I think the game plan for both teams is eerily similar. Like I said, both teams want to get a lead. If they can get more than a 3-point lead, then they're going to feel like they can start to kind of impose their will on this game on either side, whether it's the Chargers or the Steelers with that lead. I think the first score is huge in this game. So I wouldn't be surprised to see either offense maybe take a swing, a big, one of those big play action swings if they get an opportunity early in the game. For the Steelers on offense, the game plan is, like I said, very simple. Do not turn the ball over. And Mike Tomlin is, you think of him because when he came into the league, he was one of the younger coaches as a younger coach, but he's now one of the older coaches in the league. He's been established, right? He does not necessarily go into games thinking the same way as some of these analytically minded guys. If it's 4th and 1 at the Chargers 45, he might be more inclined to punt, set up field position, and play the game that way. And I think Harbaugh is probably going to look at it similarly. And so the defensive side then is, okay, let's see if we can't force mistakes. Whether it's Justin Herbert, making a poor read, whether it's one of our corners, and their secondary looks much better so far through 2 games this year than the last couple of years. The Steelers, they went out and got Dante Jackson from Carolina in the Deontay Johnson deal. Joey Porter Jr. has really grown into one of those corners that will follow the number 1 receiver all over the field. And of course, you've got the pass rushing element of TJ Watt, of Alex Highsmith, and they've got a third edge rusher now as well, Nick Herbig, who will sub in for those guys, who actually has kind of learned at the foot of TJ Watt. He's a fellow Wisconsin guy. So they've got the pass rush. If they can use the pass rush to force Herbert into mistakes, then that would be the perfect game plan. Have Fields protect the ball on offense. Have Watt and your secondary go after the ball on defense.
All right, so Watt was a big topic of conversation, obviously, in our show, and I'm sure it is for every team that gets ready to face the Steelers. Joe Alt has been a major surprise for Charger fans. Not the fact that he's good, it's the fact that he's good this soon. The fact that he completely Crosby for a half and completely took care of Jadeveon Clowney last week against the Panthers, where he looks like Hall of Fame right tackle good. To see what he does against Watt is going to be a matchup we're going to want to pay attention to the entire game. In Pittsburgh, are you thinking he's going against a rookie? He's going to have a field day. It's going to be a long day for Justin Herbert. What is the talk on what TJ Watt does? Because usually he gets his way every single game.
Yeah, I think it's, let's see what the kid's made of, right? And if Joe Alt really is as good as he's looked in these first couple of games, then, hey, there you go. He's gonna do his best to limit TJ Watt. The catch there is, like I said, and this has long been a standard of the Steelers defense going back to when I was a kid, right? In the 90s. They've always had 2 or tried to have 2 really good edge rushers. One great maybe, but one very good to complement that other edge rusher. In this case, they do. Alex Highsmith, probably one of the more underrated edge rushers in the league. And so let's say Joe Alt, locks down on TJ Watt, or let's even say Rashawn Slater draws TJ Watt more often than not. There's nothing to say that Watt might not flip sides of the formation every once in a while, or they might decide to target things differently. Let's say Watt is somewhat neutralized. You've still got to keep an eye out for Highsmith. Like I said, you've still got to keep an eye out for Nick Herbig, that third edge rusher who will rotate in. And they still do have older guys up front who can create a little chaos on the interior of the line. And if the push should come from the interior, your tackles can be having a great day. But look, a lot of these guys on the Steelers front, whether it's Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, they've worked against Bradley Bozeman in the past, right? His days in Baltimore as well. So they may know what works. They may look at some of those interior stunts. They may look to bring an inside linebacker occasionally. They got a great one out of NC State and Peyton Wilson, who's already had a few big plays, both between preseason and regular season at this point. They love him. I think they're going to do everything they can to generate a pass rush. It just may not end up being, if those tackles, if Slater and Alt really stand tall, it may not be in the prototypical way we think of a pass rush now. It may be more about stunts inside, bringing inside linebackers, letting your big guys up front do the job.
So obviously the Steelers beat the Atlanta Falcons week 1. I thought it was a great win. People are going to say, the Steelers didn't score a touchdown. That's not good. I don't look at it that way. I say if you could beat a team on the road without scoring a touchdown, your defense must be awesome. And I think the Steelers do have a great defense. Us Charger fans, we look at this game. It's the big, bad Pittsburgh Steelers. We haven't played a great team yet. We believe the Steelers are a playoff team. How do Steelers fans view the Chargers? They look at the Chargers as a playoff team as well?
I think it's, that's a really good question. I don't know if Steelers fans have necessarily thought long and hard about what the Chargers are right now. It might be more about what can the Chargers be, right? Because I think the long game here is Harbaugh comes in and instills his ethos and his idea of what this team is supposed to look like and a Greg Roman offense and all that. And the thought is, hey, if they can put their quarterback in a good position, this is a quarterback who should be able to get to the second round of the playoffs at least, right? And it's all about quarterbacks still in this league. I know the first couple of weeks of the season would tell you that things are shifting on offense, and maybe they are around the league. But the difference here is still you've got to have a quarterback who has both the mental ability and the physical ability to put the ball where he wants to put it, where he has to put it on any given play. And Herbert's capable of that. So I think people look at it, Steelers fans, if they were asked to analyze the Chargers in great detail, they would look at it and say, okay, good quarterback, if not really good quarterback. They've remade the offensive line a little bit. The defense has some names who should be able to create some chaos for our offensive line, because the Steelers' offensive line is still dealing with some issues, especially at the tackle positions. Let's keep them from making the big plays. They would look at the Chargers as a team that's probably very evenly matched with the Steelers, but again, has the quarterback advantage, which is always the biggest advantage in this league. So, Steeler fans, if they're being honest with themselves, look at the Steelers and see an 8.5, maybe 9-win team. And if you're honest with yourself and you look at the quarterback disparity, there's at least another win, I think, on top of what the Steelers are compared to what the Chargers are. They are a 9.5, if everything goes well, 10-win team. So, a team that they, you alluded to it at the beginning, I think a team that they may be battling with for AFC wildcard position down the stretch.
I think definitely both teams are wildcard teams. They'll fight all the way until the end. 2 questions from me. One, have you enjoyed the Justin Fields experience of the brilliant and then the absolute I want to punch myself in the face moments? Because it's a fun ride, and I like to hop on that roller coaster and with the nice cherry Coke and have myself a day. And then the other thing is, besides Watt and besides Fields, who's like the X factor, if you will, the classic, ESPN question here, but who is like the X factor, if you will, for the Steelers in this game that can really help them win and take out the Bolts?
Well, I'll start with the Fields question. It's very reminiscent, and I'll make another comparison to the Steelers teams of the 90s that I grew up watching. It's very reminiscent at times of the Cordell Stewart experience back in the day, because the Cordell Stewart experience was very similar in that he'd rip off a 70-yard run and leave the defense in the dust, and you'd be like, oh my God, what just happened? And you'd be losing your mind. And then the next series, he'd inexplicably throw right into triple coverage in the middle of the field, and you'd go, oh my God, what is he doing? So it's very similar to that. Fields has done a good job, though, of managing those, oh my God, what is he doing moments. And he hasn't really done a couple bad snaps. Hasn't really had any of those moments yet. Maybe the Chargers defense is the one to force him into some of those spots. And I would say the X factor is one that I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, Mario, which is George Pickens. This team has a really thin receivers room. They are going to get Roman Wilson back this week, who's missed a bunch of time since the preseason. Coincidentally enough, he'll be making his NFL debut against his old college coach. Don't know how much he'll play, but it's nice to know that they'll have a little bit more depth at the receiver position, because right now it's George Pickens and just a bunch of dudes, right? Like it's Van Jefferson, it's Calvin Austin III, it's Scotty Miller. Everybody's real curious to see what Roman Wilson can do. I don't know if he'll be totally unwrapped like a shiny new toy this weekend, but it'll help. Hopefully, maybe draw some coverage away. I don't know if the Chargers are going to overly concern themselves with anybody else in the Steelers receiving core. They need to concern themselves with George Pickens. Like I said, there were a couple big plays last week that ended up getting called back because of penalties against Broderick Jones, who's been benched now, who was starting at right tackle for the Steelers last week, lost his job mid-game to Troy Fautanu, the first-round pick. So they've got to keep an eye on George Pickens. If he gets behind someone, it's done. It's over. Fields will chuck it up. He's got the arm to do it. Pickens will run underneath it. That'll be the big play that changes this game, especially, like I said, if this is going to be the under sort of slugfest 1916, 1917 kind of game I think we all expect, one big play on either side, but one big play could completely change the complexion of things.
You know, what's funny is all those receivers you just named that everyone's like, I don't know who those guys are. They're all going to all end up being Pro Bowlers. And then the Steelers aren't going to sign any of them when their contracts are up. They're all going to sign with the Panthers, Dolphins, or Chiefs, and their careers are going to end. I mean, it's the Steelers always find receivers, and then they disappear the next organization they go to. It's absolutely amazing. You know, you said something at the beginning that I didn't think about that you're 100% right on. This game is Ravens against the Steelers, which those games watching from afar as a football fan, I've always enjoyed because, you know, everyone says, oh, this is going to be a physical game. I'm like, every game's physical. They're literally trying to knock each other's D's right in the dirt every play, and it is crazy physical. But when the Ravens and Steelers play, it just seems like it's another level. And it's always a can't miss 2 games of the year. The deal is this is really the 3 Harbaughs against Tomlin, because, you know, John's calling Jim. You know, Jack's calling Jim, right? It helps John out if the Chargers win.
Yeah.
But so many things are Ravens against Steelers. Now, what scares me about it, and one of my favorite players in the NFL who's now a Steeler is Patrick Queen. Josh mentioned his name earlier in the show. He's one of those guys like, oh my God, the Ravens aren't going to hold on to him. Like, can the Chargers grab this guy? He is an X factor guy, in my opinion. But here's the deal. The Chargers play the Chiefs next week. That is the game for us. And I'm worried about, as physical as I think this game is going to be, how banged up are the Chargers going to be? How banged up are the Steelers going to be? Because it's early in the season. It's only week 3. You just got a lot of games to go, and you got to keep guys healthy. As we said, this is it. This is the Harbaughs against Mike Tomlin. It's going to be a whole different level.
Yeah, I think this is the way both rosters are kind of built, though, too, right? I mean, I know, for instance, I don't think Michael Pruitt is going to be available for the Steelers on Sunday. Again, my guy Mark Cabali from the McAfee Show let me know that he wasn't necessarily full go in practice on Friday. So that kind of limits some of the multiple tight end formations that Arthur Smith likes to run, but they'll still run them anyway. Like, they still want to. There will still be a moment in this game where one offense is going to have an opportunity to put the game away against the opposing defense. And do you think either head coach wants to do it with anything other than a bruising running game? And even if, let's say, I'll knock on wood for your sake here, let's say Dobbins isn't in the game late for whatever reason, and it's the Gus Bus finishing things up. Let's say for the Steelers side of things that it's Jalen Warren instead of Najee Harris. Whatever it is, these teams are built with multiple backs that they trust, with big physical offensive lines. These teams are built to play football that way. And it's kind of ironic that in a week where everybody and their brother is complaining about what's happening to the passing game in the NFL, and blah, 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 people are sitting back and saying, no, this is football. Elandon Roberts, the Steelers inside linebacker, said it yesterday. This is football. This is what run the ball, punch the other dude in the mouth, and let's see who walks away with a win. And I think that's going to be the story of this game. And you're right. Both teams will probably end up paying a price for it a week or 2 weeks later, right? But I think if you can show that you can impose your will and just smash another team in the face and walk away with a win because of it, in this day and age, as offenses and more importantly, defenses are evolving, maybe that's a bigger key this year than it has been in the last 10, 15, 20 years to getting yourself farther than the wild card round, to maybe going deep into the playoffs, maybe even winning a championship. Maybe we are back to defenses and a run game win championships. At the very least, it's going to be what wins this week's game, I think.
So we'll wrap it up with the question everybody wants to know. What's your final score prediction?
Oh, I said this number earlier. It's 19-17. I'm not going to take the soft way out and say, oh, it could be either team. It could be either team, but I'm not going to do that. I honestly see this as like a walk-off field goal or late score kind of game that ends 19-17. I'll ride with the Steelers because I do think the pass rush is going to create issues for a less than 100% Justin Herbert. And I'll, cross my fingers and again, knock on wood that Justin Fields continues to protect the football the way he has and not give the Chargers any short fields, not give them any free points, and that maybe they're able to pop one big play to George Pickens like I alluded to. And so I'll take Steelers, 19-17.
One last question for me. This is a question that everyone's been wanting and everyone in New York's really curious about. So I have to ask you it. Who's your more favorite bald guy, Mike Tomlin or Sean Marash?
Come on, Marash.
Really? I thought it'd go Tomlin.
Oh, no. It's Tomlin. I was laughing at the suggestion of Marash as one of my favorite bald guys. No. Come on. No, I'll take Marash can go. I don't know. Do Giants fans even watch the games anymore? He could go do that if they're still watching games. And I'll take Mike Tomlin. I have started parenting my kids with Tomlinisms. I used the windshield is bigger than the rear view mirror a couple weeks ago on my daughter after a softball game. And it was like a light bulb went off. I was like, oh, where'd you hear that? I was like, Mike Tomlin. And so, yeah, parenting skills being taught by Mike Tomlin cliches. You could do a lot worse, I think.
Hey, Chris, before you go, can I tell you real quick my favorite Steelers story?
Yes. Please don't mention Alfred Papunu. Thank you.
No, it is 100% not. First of all, I'm following the Chargers all those years. I still can't pronounce his last name. He did a better job than me. All right, real quick. Real close friend of mine, huge Steelers fan growing up, and he gets a pass as a kid to be the water boy for the Steelers against the Raiders. This is in the 80s, okay?
Yeah.
And he's super excited. Like, this is my team. He's followed the Steelers through 4 Super Bowls, and he's at the Coliseum in LA, and Donnie Shell is his favorite player.
Yes.
And he sees Donnie Shell come off the field right after warm-ups, and he's sweating a little bit, and he goes running over with 2 Gatorade cups, orange Gatorade, loses his balance, pours it right into Donnie Shell's number 31 white jersey. So before the game even starts, his whole jersey's stained in orange. And Donnie Shell just screams at him. Sad part is he was 38 years old when this happened. No, my buddy was like 14 years old. But that was his hero. And he finally going to meet his hero, and he ruined his jersey before the game even started, and he got cussed out by Donnie Shell.
That's brutal. Brutal. Yeah. But, I mean, it's a hell of a story to have years later.
Thanks for sitting there through that story.
That's like I don't know what it reminded me of, but I know it's just Pittsburgh, but like the Sidney Crosby delivering the season tickets.
Yeah.
Let's just nothing against Pittsburgh. It's a little weird when there's a 65-year-old grown man in a Crosby jersey, like shaking Crosby's hand and going, "Thanks, man." Like that's a little, like that.
I don't think you properly understand the placement of Sidney Crosby, Mario, in Pittsburgh sports culture. Like, we have legitimate conversations about where the statue is going to go. Like, that's all that's left for this guy, So, I mean, it's weird I get it, but like, if Sid showed up to my front door with season tickets, I'd probably fanboy a little bit too, to be quite honest.
All right, how many people in Pittsburgh have Renegade on their phones when the phone rings?
At least 15%, I'd bet you. At least.
Josh and I are going to Pittsburgh next summer. We're going to see a game. We got to see the baseball field. Josh and I are super excited.
Oh, best ballpark in America. If only the team could be half that good.
That's it. Chris, we really appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much. Thanks for talking Steelers football with us. Again, that's Chris Mack from the BetQL Network. A lot of fun. Again, it's a 10 a.m. kickoff in Southern California. Chargers taking on the Steelers. If you're a fan of the Bolt Crew podcast and want to hear this game live, you will not hear us doing play-by-play, but we'll be like sitting in your living room as we'll be discussing what's going on and probably a lot of cussing. we'll try and do the best we can to do a little Phillip Rivers and clean it up for you. But otherwise, a lot of emotion coming out. But again, thanks to Chris Mack. That was awesome, guys. Anyone else?
Yeah, it was
No,
awesome.
no.
Let's.
Okay.
I'm excited for the live. I'm gonna be, like I said, coming fresh off a plane, off a wedding. So it's gonna be really nice to sit in a chair, get the largest coffee of all time, and sweat my ass off for 4 hours.
Yeah, can't
we
wait.
go.
Get that W.
Can't wait.
Let's go. I have a lot of bets that day too, so let's go.
Thanks everyone. For Mario Heron, Josh Palais, I'm Dave Palais. Thanks again for listening to the Bolt Crew podcast. We'll catch you guys on Sunday.